Hello and welcome again to the Think Bambu podcast, the show where we unpack the personal and professional growth journeys from some of the most interesting minds in business and marketing. And today we have none other than Stephen Mallon. Stephen, for those that are unfamiliar with you, would you care to give a little introduction to yourself?
Yes, hi, I'm Stephen Mallon. I guess that you could say I'm a veteran of the digital and marketing agency space. I spent my formative years in Big Mouth Media, most of those as Director of Services and Operations, growing and scaling that business before we sold it. I stayed on in that combined entity and became MD of Media for Digitas. I now, and for the last 7 years or so, have been working with dozens of agency founders, owners, and leadership teams on their journey using my lived experience and acquired knowledge to help them towards their respective ambition. And last year, I joined a business called Scaled to do that with a number of other partners across the UK.
Grand. So for those that who are aware of Big Mouth Media, they were, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here or backslapping ourselves too much here, but they were pretty much the best independent SEO agency at that time that went through a few mergers and acquisitions. And Stephen, you're pretty instrumental in all of that. You're one of the originals and made a huge impact on, I want to say, a lot of people's lives, because if you say you came from Big Mouth Media, there's a bit of a stamp of approval there. There's like okay, this is most of the time quality that's come out of that. So reason why I'm prefacing this is for the first question, because you've spent 15 years in a leadership position. And for when I say leadership, you're in leadership positions in quality places, really quality establishments with some of the best in the world. And I hand on heart mean that the people there were absolutely fantastic. So with that, what was the most difficult decision that you had to face in those 15 years, whether it's at Big Mouth or any of the positions that you've held since then, that was a catalyst for your own professional professional or personal growth?
I don't think there is a specific decision, a definite pivot point, or an epiphany that acted as a catalyst for personal growth. Actually, I think there was probably more of a creeping realization that forced me to change my mindset and my approach, if you like. Um, when Big Mouth was growing massively and very, very quickly, and I moved into ever more senior roles very, very quickly, I was in my mid-20s. I didn't have any experience. Big Mouth was my first real job. So I knew what I knew. I had some skills and capabilities and maybe some intuition or whatever. But, I was a kid. I was growing up. I was developing, myself. Um, but here I was gradually assuming responsibility for diverse teams of dozens and dozens of people, client portfolios worth millions, ever increasing millions of pounds. It became bigger and it became more complex very, very quickly. And so, the decisions that had to be made, the things that had to be done, the strategic plans that had to be put in place, they all became more complex more quickly as well. And I got to a point where what I knew and what I didn't know became completely imbalanced. I got to a point where sequentially I'd gone, I got this, I got this, I got this is okay, until I got to a point where I don't got this. I don't got this. And when that point came, at a certain point in the growth journey of Big Mouth Media, all of those kind of questions around anxiety, self-doubt, imposter syndrome, all set in. And I guess at that time as well, I was doing the classic thing that I advise business leaders on today. I was doing client work over here and still involved in key accounts. I was doing pitch work over there for new business. I was doing finance stuff, operational process stuff, staff management stuff. You were still doing that, sucked into the day to day of delivery. Um, and as well as trying to put into place key decisions that were going to take the business forward. And as part of that strategy that we had for growing, developing, and selling. Um, so gradually, I went from thinking, from that imposter syndrome perspective, someone who's I should have all the questions. People are looking to me to have answers for everything. I should have the answers to those questions, and you do that because people are dependent on you. To being a bit more honest about the fact that I didn't, and to be honest with others about the fact that I didn't. And I think that was the first proper step, accepting that I didn't have the answers to everything, that I don't know what the right course of action is going to be, and that that's okay because as a 20 something year old or even early 30 something year old, you're very much a work in progress. You're developing as well as the thing that you're developing. Um, and when you do that, or when I did that, you can be a little bit more open to thinking about growth and development. You can start to think about, okay, I do really have weaknesses and those weaknesses are exposed. How can
Hmm.
I work on
Hmm.
those? But I also have some strengths. I have some stuff that I'm really, really good at, and I can accentuate those. So then you start to think about maybe exploring different ways of doing things, taking advice that you might not have taken before, guidance from different sources, and importantly for me as well, getting some direct help to navigate that path. So I don't think a particular decision point, Jamie. I think it was just a culmination, a creeping culmination of things that compounded to get to the point of saying, I don't think I can do this by operating and behaving in the same way that I have up until that point. And that pressure point for me initially, I think coming when I was pretty young.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah.
You mentioned a few bits in there, because we've had others talk about imposter syndrome before, and I want to say it was maybe about a week ago. I am terrible for getting the message across, but completely forgetting the source, who said it, anything like that. But just, this is what they said. I was like, right, okay, that's the part. I really should remember the names. But I knew it was on LinkedIn. And the idea was around imposter syndrome, that they don't like it. It's around, or they didn't like the term imposter syndrome, and that it was on their confidence journey. And that confidence journey meant that they might not have encountered that situation yet, so they don't know how to handle, or at least don't have the confidence to handle that yet. Or there's a stronger character, or a strong character that might hold different power in the room there, and there causes an imbalance. So how does that make them feel? All the rest of that, and in order to overcome that, the idea was, well, as you said there, get direction, get mentorship from others who can maybe guide you on that path. I know that we didn't talk about this, and we might get into this a little bit later, but y what you've also said is quite, at least in my experience, been quite common in agencies where you are in your mid to late 20s, sometimes early 20s, where you are getting pushed into these senior leadership roles. And good thing, bad thing, who knows? Some people can handle it, others or sometimes can't. Um, you obviously could. Who was that person that was at that time being able to give you that direction, or that guidance when you did feel like, oh, I don't got this for the first time, um, to help bring you on your confidence journey and come out the other side a lot stronger?
There were a few people, Jimmy. So I started to be a little bit more open, I think, with how I felt things were and how things were impacting me, and also then to seek out advice from different areas. So as you know, there's a great leadership team inside Big Mouth where maybe I wasn't open enough with how I was feeling in my situations and how I was responding to things, and just by having the right conversations, there was a lot of assistive help, particularly from Lindsay Menzies at the
Yep.
time, who was our CEO. And I don't think that she knew by any means that I was in that state of mind. It came as a bit of a surprise, which I guess shows the sort of deflection and self-defense mechanisms that I'd put in place, and
Hmm.
not exposing the vulnerability that I felt. And then secondarily, I think Phil Gripton, at a separate point in time, who came in as CEO at LBI, similarly helped with that. And then by extension, Phil then put me in touch with a leadership coaching and development expert called Martin Palethorpe, and Martin
Yeah.
Palethorpe is hugely influential, not just in the way that I think about leadership, but in the way that I think about concepts like quality of mind, and clarity. So impactful, probably more by extension on life as well as within business and leadership. So a number of different sources at different times, and for different things. Some of it quite pragmatic and practical,
Mhm.
other a bit more kind of lifestyle oriented and thinking outside in. So three real kind of influential sources for me who, yeah, I'm still very grateful for the kind of interventions and the impacts and what they've imparted on me. And these are lasting things. They're things that I take into my practice today, with the business leaders that I work with.
I think that's great that you can share that because there will be absolutely others out there who are in that position where they are, as you say, feeling vulnerable. The anxiety is getting drawn in, and when you are in that, especially when you're in your mid to late 20s, I know I definitely felt that, where you think that people are expecting you to have the answers because title says this, therefore you should be able to handle it.
Yeah.
And whilst there is an element of this is the job, this is what you're paid to do. There's the human element where we all need that guidance, we all need that path, and to have that strong structure or the support network around us is, I think you need it. I think it's essential.
I think as well in this sector, in the sector that I've worked in for so long, Jamie, and you might recognise it yourself, and what you see is that leadership becomes something that you accumulate. Most
Mhm.
businesses, most agencies of this type, they start from a point of subject matter expertise. Oh, I'm passionate about design. I'm passionate about SEO. I'm passionate about whatever. They don't necessarily think to themselves, oh, I am going to be a business leader and I'm going to cultivate all of the skills necessary to go and do that. It happens one day over a period of time where people wake up and recognize, well, I've actually got a £2.5 million P&L and a team of 20 all of a sudden, and I'm not quite sure how that happened. And now I've got a completely different set of challenges, responsibilities, etc. That I didn't necessarily set out to have, but it forces me to adopt a different style, a different set of competencies and capabilities and confidences to lead that forward. And that's a completely different set of challenges than people were necessarily set out for. And some people, you're right, have natural skills which they can then lend and equip themselves towards that. For others, it has to be something they learn and are open to. And for others, it might be a case of actually kind of close it down altogether, which would be really unfortunate. So that's the nature of the sector and the nature of leadership in this sector is there are different ways and means of getting to that path of having a successful, viable business, but it presents different personal challenges to them as well at different stages, and it's about how they equip themselves to deal with it.
Well, I'm gonna take a quick but tight left turn here and, go more down your professional growth here, but also to help others. So you've mentioned there that you work with Scaled and you've been, uh, guiding and advising agencies and look, including Think Bamboo. I'm totally happy to put that out there. And if anyone is thinking about anyone, get Stephen. He's brilliant. So just on that, you can feel free to tell us that we might be making the same mistake here as well. Um, I'd love you to share just either things that you've seen over the years or a commentary. What do agencies think that clients care about, but in actual reality doesn't make a difference, doesn't move the needle? They actually don't give a hoot, and yet they still practice or go down that route.
Ooh, um, I'm okay. We're at the risk
You
of
don't
making
have to name
myself
names
very
or
unpopular here.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh no, 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 go for it. I love it. If it's, I bet we do like everything, everything wrong.
I think the real answer is that there are lots, Jamie. There are lots. I guess it's maybe better to think about it the other way around. To think about the one thing that clients care most about, and the agencies must do, but often, unfortunately, don't. So when I think about the most senior clients that you can work with, those in corporate positions, C-suite corporate positions, the ones with authority, budget, and the big scary arse challenges, the commercial and strategic challenges inside
Mhm.
those businesses, then they fundamentally care about one thing, and it's really simple. It's what can you do for me? Um, it's how can you help me hit targets, fulfill strategic plans, etc. How can you remove barriers, overcome challenges that I've got? How can you contribute to that? Because that's what they need. All of their pain, all of their needs stems from all of that. And to my mind, the job of an agency is to alleviate that pain. It's to remove that barrier. It's to meet and overcome that challenge. And it's when you do those things, you create better outcomes for that client and for that business. So agencies need to link what they do and how they do it to those outcomes directly, because clients in the end are buying those outcomes. They're buying the solutions and the value that comes from it. They're not buying services. Lots of agencies have the same services. They're not particularly differentiated. They're
Yep.
not buying your best in class team, because nobody says that they've got the second best team in the market, in the industry. And they're not buying the fact that you're an extension of the team or the strategic partner or whatever else. They're buying the difference that you can make. So that means one thing: everything that you do needs to be geared towards doing that, showing that, and proving that. Um, and agencies that can't do that, who squirrel back into offering services and saying that they're a strategic partner and they've got the best, they are offering commodity. They're offering something that dozens of other people have got. Agencies who can answer that fundamental thing for the client, they're offering value. And that is differentiated. And that is something that, wins new business, retains clients, gets extensions, and gradually does make you a strategic partner for those clients. And that's the one thing. It's the one thing that everything needs to gravitate towards.
I'm Even though right now my position is agency owner, I've got been client side, so to speak, and I remember having to, like, when you're being pitched and like echoing everything that you've just said. It's I when my mindset was flipped, the only thing I cared about was, look, I've got these KPIs. You're going to help me hit them. Can we do this? This is what I need you to do for me. And oh, you want me to sit through 20 minutes of your achievements and awards first? Oh, I could just like, I'm okay to leave that. Here's the team. I was like, well, I know you're not going to be there. You're not going to be here. You're gone as soon as this meeting's done. So and so here, who's probably like the most junior in the room, who's actually going to be doing the work. I want to talk to them and see what that was going on. But it was all these moments that I wanted to take on for Think Bamboo and how we do it. And I don't think we get it right, by the way. I'm not sitting here going, oh yeah, everything we do like absolutely not. There are times where we get focused on the service, but I've got to draw back to no, it's all about the outcome. So X client here is with us because they believe that we are going to help them get more applications. And we've got to prove that. That's what they care about. They don't care about, we used SEO and UX and content design. They don't give a hoot as long as they get 180 applications that month. Good. KPI hit. Keep doing it. Get 200 the next month. So I'm totally with you there. And I think anybody listening to that from an agency will either think, well, that's not me, and it maybe is, or others that are listening and going, yeah, we need to go back to the proposition here, make that clearer.
The fact of the matter is in those sales cycles, sometimes that stuff is much more difficult to uncover. It's much more easy for agencies to broadcast, right? To say, this is who I am, this is our great work, this is our history, this is our, so on and so forth, and take up an hour of someone's time. It's much easier to do that than to ask quite interrogative questions to try and establish pain and need and position a solution against. It's much easier to just say, this is what we've got. Do you want some of it? Which is in effect what that kind of broadcast pitching does. But the reality is that sort of value-based consultative sales type approach is much more successful in winning business, probably at a higher level, and in retaining business and growing business over the long term. So whilst it's a difficult methodology to employ, or much more difficult to employ, it's much more effective and it's much more beneficial for both parties. There's nothing worse. I've been there as a client, sitting there being broadcast at for 90 minutes and still thinking there, sitting going, I don't know what the hell these guys can do for me, frankly.
Yeah.
Um, and, you know, sitting through those pitches and those proposals, documents and stuff. And then the conclusion sometimes you reach as a buyer is that these people don't actually know why they're here. They
Yep.
don't know why
Yep.
they're here. They're there because they want business, but they don't know what it is that their services and their solutions are trying to do in terms of create value and make change for me happen. And that, when you think about it, it's pretty criminal. That people you know, agencies are out there pitching and proposing things that they don't actually know what for, fundamentally.
So I've got a now this is definitely this is all about you. I just want to chip in with the story to you, vice versa on this here, because I've definitely been on the other side where, you know, we have let's say 4 or 5 agencies pitching, and some of them at worst don't know why they're there, or two are focused on they're focused on themselves rather than the actual client, the problem they're there to solve. On the flip side of that, and this is a real life example, I will exclude names, business, all of that. It doesn't matter, but the
Are you
situation is
protecting the names of the innocent, are you?
exactly, and I can talk from experience because I was the one that was having the conversation. Um, but we got an inbound lead. They wanted to talk to us and they wanted to have a conversation within the next 2 3 days. I'm like, brilliant for anybody getting that kind of thing. I'm like, okay, they're keen to move. This is a good deal. When the conversation came, and as you say, like I much prefer. I'm not going to sit there and tell me this is look at how great we are. No, I'm going to assume that they're here because they've heard of us, or at least are interested in how we can help them. But I don't know how to help them yet, or the best way to help them, because I don't know what problem is that they're trying to solve. Why this problem is the most important problem right now. Has it been a problem before? How they tried to fix it? So it's a bit more interrogation of questions. And in that conversation, which was only, I'll be generous and say it was about 45 minutes. And after those 45 minutes, and this could be a fault of mine, of not asking the right questions, but at the end of the 45 minutes, I did not have a definitive problem that was there to solve, or what was the problem that they were looking to solve. The gist I got was, we've heard of SEO. Do you do that? What's also this GEO? I've heard of AEO as well. And Gemini, is that different to Google? And I was, okay, there's an education point here, but what is it that you're trying to achieve? And why now? What is it that we're trying to do here? And at the end of the 45 minutes, they asked, so they kept asking, well, what can you do for me? I'm saying, I don't know what I can do for you because I don't know what it is that you need or what the problem is. And in this situation, I wouldn't say they got flustered, but I could see that they were getting a bit visibly annoyed that I couldn't answer that question. And so in turn, when I said at the end of the conversation, I'm really sorry, I don't think we're the right ones for you. I don't have the information that I need. And without that, I can't help you. That is the only time that has ever happened to me, of being able to like close this down. One, I was qualifying of going like, if this is what they're going to be like in the first 5 minutes, do we really want to be working with them? No, I don't think so. Um, but on the other side, I can imagine that they will have sent out proposals to others who have said the right things of, oh yeah, we can definitely help you, right? We'll get the foot in the door. And maybe I should have just played the game and gone with that, but I thought it'd be like a bit disingenuous, and also without knowing what problem I'm going, I'm not going to, quite frankly, I don't want to waste my time putting a proposal together that I'm like, well, is this what they're looking for? I don't know. I've got no idea.
Well,
I'm
it's
just going
pure,
to hit
yeah,
that
because
up.
it's purely speculative.
Yeah, it
You
was
just
making up.
scattergun approaching it. You know, so you don't have a proposal to make because there isn't anything that you're trying to solve for. But you're right. A lot of agencies in that situation will come away from that meeting going, "Great, move it down the CRM a stage because we're now into proposal. Everyone get busy writing something and we'll send it out. It's unlikely to be successful because the client hasn't told you anything in terms of what their pain and need actually is. So, that's not a successful sales outcome really from that perspective.
No, there was no budget, no problem. Just there was no information. But so the reason I'm going to tie that into the next question here is because they were I could say they've got a problem or potentially a problem as a business. Now, the people I was talking to was a non-exec director and the MD of the business. And so I was like, okay, well, they're trying to do something here, but they're hitting this, or at least with me, they they hit a wall because they couldn't articulate what the problem was. And if they can't do that with me, are they doing that with other suppliers they could potentially have? So from your 15 years, or say 15 years in leadership, I was about to say way longer than that in business, but I don't want to put it down for that. What have you seen from either businesses that you've been in or that you've advised where they hit that invisible ceiling where they're trying to get to the next level, but they're not they're not quite getting there. And what are those common barriers, those invisible barriers that founders or MDs or even let's say CMOs might not be seeing and stopping themselves from getting to that next level?
For the most part, when you go through the process of understanding it, it tends to be the biggest barrier, visible barrier, tends to be leadership itself. It tends to be the magic blend. I talked about it earlier. I think I referenced it earlier on. Actually, I talk about this all the time. The magic blend of competence, capability, and confidence in leadership to move forward with. A bit like my younger self that we spoke about earlier. Biggest limiting factor in agencies is also often the self limitation of leaders. It's that sense of self doubt. So sometimes when you get that self doubt, particularly if you're at a certain threshold, let's say that you're a £1 million turnover business, revenue business, and you've gone through that scrappy scale up phase of acquiring some business, making yourself viable. But the next step is a big leap. Is moving much more up the scale up funnel from that sort of 1 million to £3 million journey. All of the stuff that you've done, the platforming, the infrastructure, the decisions you make, the people and culture, everything, proposition fundamentally changes as you move through that journey. So you've got big choices to make, big decisions to make. And when you've got that sense of imposter syndrome or self-doubt or anxiety and doubt, what tends to happen is inertia. What tends to happen is that big strategic decisions get deferred. Partly because leaders, especially in those scale-up type agencies, they tend to be time poor, so they can only spend their
Mhm.
time in certain places. And they're usually, as I described with myself earlier on, still involved very much in the day-to-day sort of machinery of the business, clients, new business, finance, people management, all that sort of stuff. The bigger stuff, the hairy, scary, strategic stuff, that takes time to think about, takes time to plan, takes time to plot and mitigate the risks and try and kind of accentuate the opportunities. And they sometimes take investment as well, sometimes capital investment that, businesses have worked really hard just to get on the balance sheet in the first place. So all of that can be bloody scary, actually bloody scary, especially when you're approaching it for maybe the first time.
Mhm.
Um, and lots of leaders feel really unprepared for those decisions. And they're required at various stages to move from one level to the other, as you know. But most agencies hit ceilings and stall because those big decisions that are required to move them forward to the next phase, they go unmade. They get left
Right.
on the shelf, and the leaders, they move back to the sort of general busyness of being in the hubbub of the business where they've been comfortable before. Um, so a lot of my time with agency leadership is based on trying to gradually break that barrier and that tension down a little bit, and to create a little bit of a pivot, and it is gradual, to spend more time on the business, the big shapes, and less time getting sucked into the familiar daily grind. Um, and then to help them once we've established that place and time, to help them with planning and plotting around the bigger decisions so that they feel better equipped to make them. Um, and it comes through that combination, that gradual combination of building competence, capability, and confidence to be able to go and do it. But without doubt, that is the biggest barrier in terms of hitting ceilings. It's that sense from leadership that I just don't know that I am equipped to move forward with the next phase. And actually, maybe I feel a little bit more comfortable where we are right now. So there's that sort of passive aggressive tension between wanting a bigger ambition, but not feeling unprepared to go on the next phase. And it's so frustrating.
I can maybe revealing a bit too much there, but I can relate to that quite a bit in terms of feeling that I'm unprepared with this is a new experience and how do I do this? Therefore, a decision needs to be made. I'm gonna wait until I feel better about this or see something there and things don't happen and then progress doesn't get made, but we've got there eventually. So I'm completely with you on that. To take another tangent here, or not tangent, but another turn, and I'm aware that look, we spoke about this actually briefly before we started talking, and feel free to say as little or as much as you want on this, because I'm aware that I was one of the people affected by this in a very positive way, with the acquisitions from Big Mouth to LBI to Digitas, and went on that journey. At that time, I was uh, merely account manager. Okay, now you're senior over here. Going departments, I was not part of the decision making. I was seeing the outcomes of it. But you were definitely one of the key people at that time. As you said, you then went to become the managing director. And a fantastic managing director you were from someone that was on the ground floor with that there. Now, that was quite a big at least a big period in my life and a shake up seeing what was happening within the business at that point. But you were one of the key people at that time. Can you feel free to share as I say, as much as you like here, um, a moment that you maybe a challenge that you hadn't anticipated during during those acquisitions that you had to overcome, which you eventually did, and what was the lesson that it taught you that you've been able to take on in your professional journey?
Whoa. That's a fully loaded question, that isn't it? Um,
You don't have to name names or any. I know it can get quite political, all the rest of that, but it's something that
well,
yeah,
I mean, you'll see it all the time, right? On LinkedIn, and as I do, and you'll see constant announcements about merger and acquisition activity in agency land. And my immediate thought is, from initially congratulations is always then, well, let's go back in 2 and 3 years and see how well the integration's gone between those businesses. And I think that's the biggest lesson, and that's the biggest kind of, I guess, um, point of address that I would look at any merger and acquisition activity from. You need to think and plan for the business as it's going to be, not at the point of the merger or the acquisition. And there are always brilliant reasons why businesses come together, right? And it's always about being additive from a revenue, from an EBITDA perspective, combination of services, geographical expansion, fueling innovation roadmaps, and of course, at the heart of it, brilliant people as well. Um, but in most cases, we tend to think top down as well. We think about the revenue and the profit profile. We think about those services and that strategic fit and how we're able to offer more services to existing clients, cross pollinate between clients, all that great stuff that can come from merger and acquisition activity. But there's so much more complexity underneath it. And most of it's associated with the actual integration, the what happens
yeah,
after the point of sale in the 2 years or so thereafter. And the major challenges, and let's be honest, headaches, um, come in that. It's the how, it's not the why or the what. The why and the what and rationale for doing merger and acquisition activity is very, very clear. The difficulty is in the how. And they are down to much less tangible stuff than comes in the headline terms. They're down to stuff like structure, people, culture, sentiment, all of which are much less visible and much more difficult to manage and or control. Um, because the important thing around any deal or merger is the incrementality. It's the whole
Hmm.
being more than the sum of the parts, and it's making sure that you're looking past, if you like, the business being acquired or merged at the point of sale and asking what it needs to be like in the future. Because what you're effectively buying if you're an acquirer isn't the business as it stands today. It's the business and the growth and the combined growth in 2 to 3 years' time. And it's only at that point that you know that things have been successful and incremental. That's when the value actually returns. But that's much harder to do, to look at that point and say, what have we got to do to make that really successful and to ring that through? So to plan for, to implement, and then to integrate to achieve those goals is hugely, hugely complex. And I think that, you know, what we tend to see with deal making in the agency space is that there's a lot of predication on it being about those very, very top level elements. Or look at the size of those two businesses put together, or look at the kind of talent pool that's going to come from it, or look at the combination of services that's going to come from it. But it needs to be a much more rigorous thought process to say, right, when those two entities, as it typically would be, when those
Hmm.
two entities are properly integrated, what does that look like? And how do we make sure that we go backwards from that point in time and equip the business really, really well to be able to go and do that? And that's actually bloody hard work, really, really bloody hard work. And at times, I think, quite unpredictable.
The integrations part is really interesting because from having lived, like, well, you lived through it as well. In fact, you probably lived through it a lot more than I did. The impact for it at the time, I felt was actually quite minimal from, or at least the effect it had on me, because what it looked like from the outside, and I definitely put myself on the outside rather than being at the heart of it, was we've got a much bigger office down in London now. Okay, this is great. We've gained a big bar. That seems cool. And we've now got a lot more clients that we got to be a part of. And it's like, okay, that was that there. Where I wasn't affected by the culture. Now, I know there was a few, I won't say names or anything like that, but I was aware that those that had come from the merger that had to start working on different clients together, there was a difference in opinion of how to be approaching that, and I thought, okay, this is something that I've not come across before, but I reckon they must have anticipated that this is going to come to a head. How are they going to deal with it? It was mostly positive for me, so I thought that it actually worked out quite well, without too many casualties, as can sometimes happen with minis, if you know what I mean, with redundancies and all the rest of that. There didn't seem to be too many of those. To again take a completely different, this is going to go a different turn here, but going down a more personal route, because Stephen, you're quite into your football and you do some coaching there. And I just want to get this, right here. So you have got some SFA coaching badges. Can you care to tell me what those are?
Yes, I don't know if it will mean very much to very many people, but I am partway through my UEFA C license as it stands on the youth course. So yeah, I've been doing coaching for a few years now since my son joined his local football team, and now I do a bit for my son and a bit for my daughter as well, who started fairly recently as a 7 year old in her little team. So yeah, it's one of those things where it's actually really enjoyable, Jimmy, to be honest, and it's a completely kind of different slant on on because my day job is effectively about coaching to some extent as well. Then
Yep,
then
yep.
then the evening twice a week is also about, or three times a week is about that as well to an extent, but from a completely different lens. Although I guess there are some similarities to some extent as well.
The question might be writing itself here. What have you I'm gonna expand upon the question that I originally had because it the first part of the question, I'm gonna put it into two parts. First part of the question is what have you learned about with coaching children that you've been able to adapt to a coaching or boardroom setting with, professionals that have been in the game for 30, 35 years? And then what has it taught you about yourself and your own coaching that being in business for the amount of time that you have, you might not have known yet. But let's focus on part A around has there been any transferable skills from coaching the young children that you've been able to adapt to a professional situation?
I'm glad that you're going to break the question down into two, because I don't think I could have answered the double whammy. I would have forgotten the second part by the
Yeah.
time the first part came around. I guess the couple of things really. Whatever your desired outcome is, for kids, you want them to show development. You want to see progress. The path to that desired outcome is never linear. The kids are individuals, and they will develop and progress in different ways and in different stages. So coaching needs to be ever more tailored almost individually to achieve development and progress. So sometimes you need to say and do the same skills practice, for example, in multiple different ways for different kids. But also, to the point that we were making earlier on, you have to demonstrate what good looks like for them to get it right. Um, and as with many things, and I think this is true across coaching kids, as well as in business, whether that's working with clients or my work with agency leaders. um Sometimes the thing that works best is the positive reinforcement.
Mhm.
There is some similarity with senior leaders that I've worked with, client side and agency side, over the years in that sense. But so for, I guess, from those business leaders, you need to the point that we were making earlier on, you need to understand their objectives, their pains, their barriers, and their needs, and you need to understand how you can help them. You need to demonstrate that value in some way through providing that help and the outcomes that they can achieve. And I guess, like, that kind of idea about articulating it in different ways to different people is based on their different personality types and angles and ways of thinking. And in that sense, it's a bit like a development path for a group of kids learning how to play football. Um, I guess in my when I transport that into my work with agency founders and leaders, a lot of the challenges that we address are common, right? I will maintain that right across the agency sector, for different agency types and different sizes and stages, a lot of the challenge areas that they have to address are totally common. New business growth, retention and growth in existing clients, marketing and positioning and proposition, people and culture, efficient operations and profitability, service development, innovation. These are the same in every business, but the way that they manifest themselves in each business is different, and that's because of people, because of individuals. Um, and that makes sure that the approach that you have to take or I have to take in those instances is different every time, which keeps things interesting, but it also means that you have to, as you say, you need to think about it in terms of those kids and their development paths and the fact that they will progress in different ways at different times. So I guess coaching football to kids, even though the development outcome is the same, the path that you would take is massively different for each. And I think the same is true actually in working with agency leaders and founders in that sense. 100% is, and the same will be true for agencies working with senior clients, for example, in different ways and working through boardrooms and different people and different personalities and perspectives. So yeah, there are learnings from that. There absolutely are. Um, and then hopefully you get that balance right. And that's the key thing, is finding the right balance.
Well, going on from that was around the learnings that you've had from, because obviously you learn about yourself as how did I handle that situation there. Uh, Coaching kids, what has it what has it taught you going through this? Because it's quite a different process that you're going through. Has there been anything that you've discovered about yourself as you went through, as you're trying to get these SFA coaching badges?
Is there anything I've discovered about myself when I've been doing it? Um,
Maybe patience, something like that along those
I've
lines.
not
With
learned patience. I still
no,
haven't
none
learned
of that.
patience. Anyone,
Yeah.
you know, fine well, Jimmy, having worked with me for many years, I'm not massively patient, and it's a work in progress for me. That, I think, you know, I've been big, and I've spoken about it earlier, actually, in our conversation here, and I've spoken to you about it in a working context as well. But one of the things with kids that's really important is about simplicity of message. It's
Mm,
breaking things down into completely understandable, digestible ways for kids to understand. I started off probably in terms of coaching kids football, and I was using phrases like "man on" or "get goal side." And
mhm.
these kids have no bloody idea what you're talking. Of course they don't. But it's because of your intrinsic knowledge and the way that you think about things. Applying it in that context is just totally inappropriate. You might as well be talking about metaphysics.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Totally irrelevant. But then sometimes you look at the way that you operate in working context, in business context, and you look at some of the language that gets used. We talked earlier on about, you know, the sales approach for agencies. And sometimes you look at headline propositions for agencies, and you look at creds decks, and you look at, you know, proposal documents, and you're like, why are you projecting such complexity in everything that you do? You're expecting a client to then take that complexity and understand that helps me hit a sales target, or that helps me solve a problem over there. They don't understand the minutiae of what you do. You need to break it down and make it simple and make it obvious and hit them over the head with it. Um, and yeah, so there's an element of always trying to make things simple, particularly in the communication, so that it becomes really understandable and therefore actionable. Um, so I think that's a constant work in progress for me. But yes, I stood there on an astral pitch with a bunch of 7-year-olds at some point saying, yeah, something about, you know, positional structure and shape, or you know, being goal side or man on, and it just has absolutely no meaning to those people, those young people. So simplicity is key.
I I love that, and that's something I try to work on with like for every client that we're talking to. Not like, and we're working with some exceptionally clever people. You still need to be able to simplify, even just for yourself sometimes of like, hey, I was mentioning before, like, hey, we're working on this product launch. Like this, there's nothing simple about this, but we've got to be able to simplify that message to their potential audience so they're going to be able to buy. And I'm like, how do I try and anyway, we've been able to get it. I work with much people cleverer than me that are able to do this. I'm just working the SEO part. So I'm like, oh, okay, Gemma, you can figure out the messaging for this because this is hard. And it's a real talent to do. So Stephen, I mentioned at the very beginning of this, you've had 15 years in leadership. You've been around as long as I can remember since coming into my first day. And you mentioned there about Big Mouth being your first proper job. It was the same with me. It was my first ever like adult job that wasn't acting or pretending. Um, I ask this of every one of our guests, and that's to take everything that you know now, with all the wins that you've had, with all the challenges, everything you've experienced, and reflecting on your own personal journey to where you are today. What advice would you give Stephen The first day you walk through Big Mouth, those Big Mouth doors.
Ooh. Um, okay. I think I think it's some of the stuff that I probably talk to most of my clients, most of my agency leader clients today. One is back yourself more. Have a bit more trust in your instincts. Um, be more open to being vulnerable and not thinking that you have to have all of the answers, because when you do, progress will happen more quickly, and get help with doing that. So yeah, back yourself, trust your instincts, be more open to being vulnerable, and get help with that.
Those are some pretty good advice. Hard sometimes for a mid early mid-20s guy, I'm going to put the gender in there, to sometimes say, hey, it's okay, especially in the 50s and 60s, which is when you started, right?
That's very
Yeah.
funny, Jamie. That's
Very
very
funny.
funny.
Hilarious. Hilarious.
It's really good.
That's
Do you double up with an evening show as well? Do you?
Yeah, it's I go on things like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, Eggheads for this, lots of other things. Hilarious joke by me. I won't do that again. And that there. Wanted to highlight the experience. That's what I wanted to do. So on that, we mentioned earlier about people that had brought you direction, guidance, mentorship, everything there. You don't have to mention them again, but as I've said in other sessions we've had there, I say it takes a village to help people, like to elevate them and get them to where they need to be. Very rarely does someone achieve the success, especially that you've had alone. And so I like to finish off every session we do with a practice of gratitude and a moment to give kudos, thanks to someone who's either offered mentorship to you in any way, or someone you can say thanks for the growth in your personal life and professional life. The floor is yours.
Oh, I mean, I guess I mentioned a few earlier on, but I mean, the original leadership team at Big Mouth Media, absolutely. Especially, the founders, Steve, Heather, and Lindsay, who took a chance on me when I was really quite young, and offered a platform to gain experience, knowledge, skills, and a lot of responsibility, and at a level that I genuinely don't think I could have gained anywhere else. And also, like, what a blast! What fun it was through that whole process. And I don't think we spent enough time appreciating it at the time. And I wish we had a little bit. And I guess, secondly as well, there are dozens of people that I was lucky enough to surround myself with during the Big Mouth, the LBI, and the Digitas days. Like, so many, a huge number of incredibly talented people came through those doors, and they're the people who delivered on our ambition, on our
Mhm.
strategy, and our plan. Um, I'm I'm amazed sometimes, and I'm incredibly proud, of the Big Mouth LBI alumni, and what so many people have gone on to achieve, from that group. It was, like, an incredible incubator for talent. And I think for many people now, some years on, those experiences at Big Mouth and LBI have been an accelerator for their careers. It genuinely was a unique combination of people, time, and place, that has
Mhm.
benefited so many.
No, I think I echo that. I don't want to name drop it too much, but when people say, "Hey, talk about your," if you've ever been for a job interview and you mention Big Mouth Media, um, for those that know, they know, and they go, "Okay, cool." It's not as if you've got the job there already, but they kind of go, right, okay, we're on to something good here, and because they know. And for those that don't, it's an education where they look back and go, oh right, okay, maybe I should know. Um, well, here, Stephen, thank you so much for your time, and I really, really appreciate it. Can you tell us what's next for you, and where can people find you? Online. You don't have to give them their home address or anything
What's
like
next?
that. So,
It's okay. It's okay. You already know where I live. So, yeah. What's next for me? I'm loving the work that I do with agency founders and leadership teams through Scaled, and we're continuing to build that out as a UK wide proposition. Um, I just enjoy the work helping agency founders and leaders build the businesses and the lives that they want to. I'm also going to be continuing through my UEFA C license and eventually accomplish that. And I can be found in LinkedIn, and I'm always open for a conversation and an intro chat with anyone within the agency sector and space. And I can also be found at our company page at Scaled Consulting.
brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Stephen, and thank you to everyone for listening once again to the Think Bamboo podcast. I am grateful and appreciate you all. So take care and bye bye.